welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week, we are returning to our must-see horror feature.
The boys are back in town again.
And we are enjoying Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later.
Yeah. We were wondering whether it was on the must-see horror poster, and it was.
Yeah.
We decided to do it.
It wasn't planned.
It wasn't planned, no.
It was planned because of the new film that's coming out in a couple of months.
Which, I mean, I don't know, I would say I'm excited for, but I know little about.
Yeah. Probably for the best.
Yeah, probably for the best.
Normally the best way about it, it's the new 28 Years Later that's out in June, and Danny Boyle's directing again. Alex Garland's back on the script. They're bringing all the boys back together.
The boys are indeed back in town.
I mean, from this film, to be fair, I mean, they had one sequel 28 Weeks Later, which people either absolutely think is better than the original and think it's amazing, or some people think it just didn't get what the original was trying to do and things like that. But there's those kind of mixed ones, and then they were going to make 28 Months Later, and then shit just stalled, the rights issues, and I think that happened, and then they had a script. Apparently Alex Garland had already written scripts, they already had an idea planned out, they had all these things, and then they just literally couldn't get it off of the ground. It just wasn't working. So that's kind of that journey that this one had, and then finally after that they were like, well, we can't say 28 months later because it took too fucking long, so now we're going to say 28 years later. I don't know how I feel about it. I think I'm kind of, I'm quietly interested in it. I'm not going to say I'm stupidly hyped. I know there was quite a good trailer, but if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I kind of avoid them. I just don't know. I worry that it's going to end up in that kind of what are they calling it? Requel territory. I don't know how they're going to pull it off, because the end of this kind of, at least I feel, clearly kind of indicates one thing that they assume is going to happen. I'm not going to say spoilers because I don't know. I mean, the film was 23 years old. The film was 23 years old. But I guess my main thing that I'm trying to say is they're very kind of confident, or Danny Boyle is this isn't a zombie film. Yeah. Everybody always says it's a zombie film. It reinvigorated the zombie genre. Yeah. And then throughout the film, quite often they're talking about we want to starve them out effectively. Yeah. So I don't know whether I just think that where it was left at the end of the film, where you're seeing all of the dead that are literally starving, and you think, that's
not even dead. Yeah. Rage-induced people who aren't dead, who are starving. Yeah. And I'm worrying that do I think that The Walking Dead is so shit that we're just going to be watching, we're just going to be watching people
It's the hard thing. Since this one did rejuvenate the whole zombie genre and things like that, and it put it into a new perspective, and it made people realise, and it technically for people, no matter what you want to say about it, it brought about the real fast
the running
zombie, which, for better or worse, some people think it changes the aspect of how it is. Some people think it's scary, but it takes away the soul of the classic Romero zombie, and those kind of things. And even, to be fair, then Romero somewhat started to take stuff from it in order to then try to continue his towards the end with his dwindling returns of the later kind of of the dead kind of ones. So it all became this kind of mixed bag. But the thing is that we've now worn that territory so much that almost going into our horror hot takes that we're going to do in the next episode. But we have kind of worn it too much. That it's kind of should the zombie genre be rested? Should it be rested for a good while? And I think, sadly, the things about that, like you said, Walking Dead, that's one of the main ones that's kind of led to it. The Walking Dead being actually a fantastic show, fantastic things in its early seasons. Yeah, and not even say that it's I didn't even get to it. I got to about 9 seasons in, so I did pretty well.
Than I did, yeah.
So I did pretty well, and I still was at that point. I was still saying, for the most part, it's still good. The problem is, it just starts to get to the point when you kind of feel how many times can we travel to a new town, and how many times can we have a new nefarious bad guy leader, and how many times am I going to be shocked that you're basically saying we'll just kill off anyone, and then be like, you know what, that doesn't work, or it's for character development. Actually, we're just like, well, fuck all that development, because we're going to shock you by killing them when we've built it up for like. It's like, okay, that's part of, I think, what's slightly killed it though, is because it's now like, with this film, with 28 years later that's coming, you know, and the difference that is, you know, it's now like, oh, how did the world change? What was the world like to live in it? Last thing. But that's what we've got from a lot of the last 10 years or so of Zombie, has been, what's it like to live, and actually, are people the real bad guys? Which is, in this original 28 Days Later, is very much a theme that felt quite fresh and new, and now feels not so fresh and new, of the idea of the humans are actually the bad guys and the zombies are actually like just something there to avoid.
Yeah, it's a very well-worn pair of jeans at this point.
That's why it's like, what new can you say with 28 years later? Not that I'm not excited for it, and you know, I you know, this is what we're here for, is to decide on the fate of the original one that inspired all this, and if anything brought back the life of the Walking Dead, and brought back, you know, the Romero zombies, and brought back the Dawn of the Dead remake that very much took from some of those styles. So, you know, we've had a good old 20 years now of zombie love. But it feels like we might be reaching I feel like this could almost be, if this is the first in a trilogy of a new one, and the first one everyone's kind of like, you haven't really got much new to say here. That might be it's dead again. This is dead. This might be the nail in the coffin.
Ironic, because it was, you know, it was dead kind of up until maybe this, and then they reanimated it. And now it's dying a death, and they've got to try and reanimate it again.
It's hard though, because I don't know how much you know about like the Alex Garland, the writer and stuff like that, but he's made some absolutely incredible. Like, he's been incredible writing in writing and directing in the last 10 years. So he is he's what should give people faith in it. To be honest, even more than Danny Boyle, who also is a fantastic and quite underrated director. Alex Garland he just did one, Civil War, which was really strong.
Really good. Like
and he's I'm blanking on what the sci-fi one he did a few years ago, Oscar Isaacs.
Is that what he did?
No, he did a TV series called Devs, which was a kind of sci-fi one, which I haven't watched, but I've heard was fantastic.
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina, which that was also fantastic. I've heard a lot, and he's done a lot of other writing ones as well, but they're the ones he's directed. And again, I mean, also Danny Boyle. Danny Boyle, I think, is a fantastic director. He's directed some great. He can be sometimes an acquired taste of a director. He did things, you know, that people don't love quite so much, like say The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. Before he did this film that was actually written by Alex Garland as well. The actual book for that.
And the book is on the bookshelf over.
Is it?
Yeah, sort of.
I've heard the book is much better than how it came out on film.
I've never seen the trailer for it.
I watched it. I think I've watched that film several times when I was a kid, which I think was an inappropriate film to watch as a kid. But I also remember people saying that Leonardo DiCaprio was highly miscast in that film. They shouldn't have gone for that. You know, I think the original choice was Ewan McGregor, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that would have worked."
That makes sense.
That made sense. And Ewan McGregor, by the way, was the original choice for this film as well. 28 Days Later.
Imagine he would be awesome then.
Yeah, he would have worked. Like, if you think about Train Spotting era, you know, we're not looking at a hugely different.
We're not looking at Obi-Wan yet. We're not looking at Obi-Wan yet, are we?
No, he wasn't Obi-Wan yet. That might have even changed the course of him being, but I think scheduling issues. So I read that Ewan McGregor and Ryan Gosling as well.
Ryan
Gosling was looking at this over here before he'd really broken out.
I mean, this
is way before he broke out. He was a young thing. Apparently, he was due to a scheduling issue. He couldn't do it over here, but he was. That was when he was more seeking like different things before he actually ended up doing a couple of years of more mainstream stuff, and then tried to do different films.
And it's interesting because this film, you know, kind of did launch Cillian Murphy. You know, it's interesting. I realise I just said it's interesting twice in like a close thing of sentences. But I watched this. I watched this with my wife, and she hadn't really. She hadn't seen it. She thought she might have, but she hadn't seen it. And then when we were watching it, she was like, "Oh, was that Cillian Murphy? Murphy?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is the kind of, I would say, the role that kind of really broke him out. You know, started to get a lot of eyes on him." And he is, he is great in this. I think
you've also got Naomi Harris, who's now, went on to, obviously, a lot of people know Moneypenny from like the new Bond films and stuff like that. But she's become huge, and also you forget, because I feel like he's been forever. But Brendan Gleeson was not always like a mainstream name. He was fairly, not that well known actually at this point. So Brendan Gleeson as well is fantastic, and this is also the era when Christopher Eccleston was like a big British name.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's not a big British name now. I'm just saying Christopher Eccleston no longer is quite the large name that he was, when he went from this to then doing Doctor Who to then, then he was doing many American role, he was in many American roles, and then that seemed to somewhat teeter off a little bit. And now, I think, to be fair though, I do believe that was partially due to his attitude towards people. I think from what I've read. But yeah, so there's loads of loads of people that kind of broke out from this, including I'd say the writer and director also launched them to go on to do like much bigger things with huger mainstream casts. Danny Boyle's obviously directed like Slumdog Millionaire,
which I only just discovered looking at his Wikipedia.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know he did that.
He does a lot. To be fair, Danny Boyle does. He's a director that you would think, after he's done some of these films, he's a director that you'd be thinking. He would make some big mainstream film. He'd get some directing gig, and he'd be offered all the and I think he has been offered those, but he does seem to be quite athletic and go for smaller kind of films in the end
and varied. You think of Trainspotting, 28 Days Later, and Slumdog Millionaire. It's quite a wide variety.
It is, yeah. Because if you think like the difference between them, but he always seems to go for more like films that can feel small but are technically always made on more of like a British like budgets and stuff like that. Even though he could direct bigger films, he's very impassioned. It seems he's very impassioned by like, if he doesn't really like the idea of the direction, or he feels like he's going to be very like shoehorned in, like Slumdog Millionaire, for instance, that was almost like a direct to DVD, and then it ended up winning like all the Oscars that year, and it was going to be put straight to DVD because they were like, no one's going to want to watch
this fucking and Bumdog Millionaire film.
That's what I mean. And he's done, and then because he did the James Franco, what's the one, 127 Hours, that one again, and then like just following that, which feels completely different. And he also did Sunshine with Cillian Murphy. A big, like what feels like a big, but when you actually watch it, it's actually a very slow pace, beautiful looking, but it's a very slow like space film. Like, I remember I loved it when I saw it in the cinema and thought, oh my god, that film was fantastic. Like it looks so good on screen, and the soundtrack. Same soundtrack from John Murphy, who does this film. Soundtrack fucking incredible.
Oh, the soundtrack is incredible.
What is it? And the one for the Sunshine one's used in so many. Like it's Adagio in D minor, which is a film that is a score that is used in so many films. It's like Inception soundtrack. It's like you just notice it everywhere now. Like that same one, and was used in so many. So you've got these amazing writers, directors, and stuff like that. Which is why I'm not saying 8 million is necessarily a small budget. To be honest, in 2002 for a British budgeted film, but I think maybe for the scale that they were aiming for, 8 million is quite conservative.
And it is. It's a very interesting film because when you look at the cast list, it's very small. When you look at the actual characters that you have in play, you only really have maybe 5 main characters who you actually pick up their names. The rest of them, you could just pull a fucking name from a hat and it will be the same. But the scale of it, like it's a big scale film. You see a lot of shots of just empty streets. Like a lot of when I was watching it, we were talking about like, well, look, that's London Bridge and that's like Leicester Square, like completely blocked out, and it feels like it almost feels like it's a bigger scale. This is going to be a really fucking weird comparison, and it's to a film that came out much later, with your favourite actor Hayden Christensen in, where I can't remember if you remember it, but it's like when anybody goes into shadows or darkness or something, they get swooped away by some, I don't know what it is.
Is that Jumper you're on about, or something like that? Is that the one when he could like jump around?
Jumper's the one where he jumps through places.
Yeah, with like Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, it's not that.
It's not that one.
It's not that one, because this is like when it's dark, like people get swooped away, and he's like one of the only people left. And it has this same vibe of 28 Days Later, where he's in like a Manhattan high-rise, you know, and you have all of the empty streets and that kind of stuff like that, and it feels like it's like one man. You know, you were talking about the Day of the Triffids.
This is Day of the Triffids. Yeah, this is Day of the Triffids. I was saying before, it's very obvious that this was inspired by not only like what I do know of the original story, and even the one that we did. You know, shout out.
Yeah, shout out.
We did an episode on it. You know, the one we watched wasn't great at all. No. That one did not make it on the must-see horror list.
No, I think
both of us said it wasn't. You know,
so none of you in the club.
But yeah, so the scenes are amazing, and I love the stuff about how it was, you know, how they actually managed to pull that off. The fact that they literally had like no minutes at all, like to basically be like, right, okay, right. They had like they managed to organise, like, I think it cost them most of the budget just for those shots, to be able to pull them off. They had to get council approval to do several things, like you know, the bus over and stuff like that, and they didn't get that approval.
I heard that they didn't get
for
the
bus,
so they
outside
just did it.
So they just quickly did it and went, fuck it, let's do it.
Take the final.
Literally, it was like 20-minute turnover, as in drop that bus on the ground, get it right on shot. Imagine that, doing 20 minutes, dropping a freaking bus on its side, getting the actors, get the shot set up, and then getting the actor, you know, to go through, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess also that does link to what I said to you when I was watching this film. Is one thing is, you know, they had to use systems and cameras that meant that they could do extremely quick shots and stuff like that. And they had to do, you know, I think, you know, it was basically a Nixon camera, which would now be used as basically like just, you wouldn't use it.
You wouldn't use it. You'd be
it literally wasn't, you know, it wasn't even like an iPhone or something, which the new one I believe is using iPhones,
which is fine.
They have incredible ways to do it with iPhones now, and they add lenses onto the iPhone. Yeah. It's not when people say, "Oh, I did this all with an iPhone." It's like, yeah, you did that with an iPhone and like a 20 grand lens that gets put onto the front of the iPhone, that therefore makes it look you know, a completely different situation. Whereas this would literally be like cameras, but it was that. And my opinion when I watched this was, when I went to find a link for this film, and I went on it first, and I went, oh fuck, I don't know what I've got here. This is fucked up. So I clicked on about 2 other links to go. So it looks wrong with this film. Why does this film look like? I mean, like I messaged you saying this film's cinematography has aged like milk. Yeah, and that is not all aspects of the cinematography. That doesn't mean amazing shots, fantastic moments, music. Some of the sound editing is fucking terrifying at points, but the actual quality of the film. I mean, there are episodes of EastEnders, for instance, from 1980 that look better quality than this film does look now.
Yeah, I was wondering.
It's almost unwatchable. If you have like a giant, I would imagine if you have like a 60-inch or higher 4K TV or something like that. Like I was watching mine on a small but 4K TV, and it looked. I would imagine if you have a fucking huge quality one, this would look fucking terrible.
Oh man!
I think you would need to have, as in, if you put this, like, if this is in cinemas. I don't know if they're putting it back in cinemas. I'm not quite sure how, but they would have to put it on like the original film reel to make it look somewhat okay. On digital, I think this would. It looks like. I thought this was why they didn't release it on streaming. When I first saw it, I was like, maybe this is why, because it wasn't on anything streaming.
No, it's not, is it?
It turned out it was a rights issue between like Fox and Sony or something like that have now bought it out and allowed it to be on. But I was like, is it because they literally just looked at it and went, people are going to think we've given them bad quality?
So we were wrong. I thought I don't have my glasses on when I'm watching it, you know. So, and it is because it has these beautiful shots and it's open, so you know it has this great opening where you know these chimps are infected with this kind of rage virus, and you know they go in there and they unleash these animal rights activists, boo. We want to test on animals.
Even though he's like, these have serious. The amount of times he tells them, he's like, they have seriously infected. Like, I'm not trying to do it to be middle, but these have this. If you do this,
I completely had to Clockwork Orange a monkey.
Yeah,
that was completely fine.
Yeah, that's fine. This is what I have to do.
I have to do this. I'm not beating off while I'm doing it. Don't worry about it. Just go, pop out. But it looks so horrid.
Yeah,
like it.
It's because it's like dark. Because it not only is like the differences, but again, when it gets to really dark scenes, you can really see the graininess of the thing. And I understand, like, but they were going for that.
They were going for it.
I mean, and yes, at the time they were going for that look, and they probably never would have thought about what it would look like in modern day. And I remember watching it on DVD and thinking,
not noticing, to be honest.
The style and the aesthetic of the film absolutely, worked for what they were trying to go for of the style of the film. It absolutely works. It just, sadly, in modern day, does not look. I'm terrified now to watch Dog Shot Soldiers.
Yes.
Because I remember that having a very same look, and that was even darker than this film. So I'm thinking now, just be like, what the fuck is happening?
I can't see anything. Yeah.
What
is happening?
Put it on TV and your grandma will think, this is a weird episode of EastEnders.
Phil Mitchell's
What's
Phil
Mitchell doing? Yeah. He's got a hairy wolf penis out.
Hairy wolf penis is beaten off. I think, this is the first time I've watched this in quite some time. So obviously the shoddiness of how it looks completely went over my head. Because I remember that they did keep that kind of slightly rough style for 28 Weeks Later, but that had the Hollywood lick of paint on it.
It still had, it was back. It was proper cameras, and then proper shot of things like that, and they had proper a bit more money to actually go, we can do all these shots and stuff. After the first one made 120 million off of an 8 million budget. I mean, that's a pretty big we'll make enough of them.
Give them some more. But the opening is the thing is, not the opening, not the cold open, but when Jim wakes up, that is the bit that has always stuck with me. I'd probably say I remembered the first act, or maybe even the first two acts of this film so well.
Yeah.
I kind of remembered it all the way up until, Brendan Gleeson's death, because I thought he was a great character.
Yeah.
But the opening where Jim, is wandering through this hospital, for fans of Cillian Murphy, you get to see his clackers and his pipe, in case you haven't.
You see everything.
Yeah, he's hanging
every single thing. He's hanging brain. I mean, if the quality was better, you'd probably be able to see.
Yeah, you'd probably see bottle, or you'd probably actually be able to make out, girth, length, or unfortunately, we didn't get to write that down.
It just looks like a little pixelated.
It looks like a little blob,
pixelated mushroom.
It looks like Japanese porn. It's Japanese porn, but it does. But that's actually not. So it's so good, when he's wandering through all of this, and then there's that horrid bit when he gets to the church.
Yeah,
because they keep.
I love the bit when he's grabbing the money.
Yeah,
because you just see these piles of money on there, and you're just piling it in. I love
notes,
and you throw it into his little bag that he's walking around with, and you're just there that's worthless. Like that, but thinking about the fact that you can have literally a bag full of money, and you're fucking what?
It'll keep you warm.
No one's doing shit. Yeah, it's good kindling. That's about it.
It's good kindling.
It'll get you high if you burn that in front of the toxins that will come off of that. Well,
I mean, just kill yourself.
Yeah,
probably better.
It's probably better than what's coming.
Yeah, but that scene where they get into the church, I feel like it's so fucking well done. You get these. It's just you don't know whether it's what it is. You don't know whether they've been led there and they've just been fucking killed. You don't know whether it was a suicide thing.
Mass suicide of people in the church. Yeah. How they've got, because we know that they're not raged, so they've been wiped out. So whether they've been taken out. I mean, this is the thing. I think some of the scale of some of the shots, the way that they've used extras or they've used props and stuff like that, the way that they build some of these scenes, and you're just this looks huge. The vision, I think, is something that makes this film so applauded within the zombie genre. It's just the fact that it has a look about it, and it has this scene of the idea of all of them dead, like these people dead in the church, the idea of, like you said, like you don't know, have they all committed mass suicide? Have they, have they been shot down by someone who was outside? You can't see enough to really work out exactly it. Some of them look like they're just hunched over. Some of them might even look like they're a bit more kind of chewed out or something like that. It's kind of hard to tell. Weird. You can see more blood in some areas, and it really gives you this really impressive. And obviously, this is before you've met anyone with rage, apart from the monkeys.
But even then, you kind of don't really.
No, you just think it's a monkey who's just freaking out like crazy. Like apart from you see the eyes, obviously.
You see the one woman who gets attacks someone, but you're still kind of like still kept in the dark about it. And then it's just how it is 28 days later.
Got the vicar coming out. The Irish lad who seems to be a little bit like as if he is. The way he responds to him as if he is somewhat religious in like he's grown up in that old like Northern Ireland kind of like is in like that kind of belief in the Catholic system or whatever.
Still similar.
Or whatever side of that
whichever
war he's on.
Whichever side. The never-ending perpetual war that is.
So I just and I love the way he's coming at him and he's just like of what to do kind of thing. Which is again. The way some of them act later, though, the rage ones, compared to this scene, you would almost think like if it'd act the same way that a lot of the rage ones, you'd have if you were caught off guard, you got no fucking chance. You are fucked.
It's really interesting because before we decided to choose 28 Days Later, I was scrolling through Reddit and I saw somebody just put up one thing saying like about 28 Days Later, like they say about not travelling at night, Like, and then why do you do that? And everybody was like, well, there's no light, so it's going to be pitch black. If you make a single noise, the infected are just going to find you. You just round a corner and go into one. It just got me thinking that made me remember just how brutal some of it is. You know, and the idea that they're not zombies is one to try and get into your head.
Yeah, the people, I guess, this is, because these aren't the undead, these are technically meant to be infected people of a highly contagious disease kind of thing. So, it is the fact that they're not so there's the idea that they're like, not there, but could they still somewhat be inside, being controlled by this rage machine? Are they not? Like, what is it that's come from them? But I just think, as much as zombies, stuff like that, and as much as they were scary and say, like, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that, when they were running and stuff like that, like, these ones are just... I think that these rage monsters are terrifying. They are so fucking just brutal, just not... Like, the way that Danny Boyle has found a way to make them, like, erratically move, the way that he uses cut shots to make it suddenly, like, the sound... The sound changes as well. The sound editing on this is so like it literally goes from quiet, because at one point I turned up my TV. I can't hear. I can't really hear what they're saying. So I turned it up to like 30, 35, hit it high. I was like, I can hear what they're saying. So next second, boom, window smash.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus fuck. I was like fucking hell, turn it down. Jesus Christ! I was like literally like the house was just like a terrifying scream in the house, like someone thought I was dead.
Because you don't know when something's got to happen.
Yeah,
you're like, oh god, you got the remote in your hand. The same thing happened to me, man.
But it's just so well, like it's so well done the way that like when they do pop out, it is. I think it is genuine jump scares, and the sound is used so well to add on to that. Like the noises that they make, the screech, the siren, like a kind of a scream that sometimes I'm a siren like, and it's like mega volume of it. You're like fucking hell. But just the way they're just erratic. But I also think the way, as we get to know, like. Even the way that certain humans act is fucking quite scary in this film.
Well, there's this, there's just like a brutalness,
Yeah.
So Jim's in the church. He fucking whomps the priest with some very kind of clear, marketing from Pepsi. Where
they had to get some extra dollars in.
Yeah, they had to get some in, and they just like. Then he's being chased, and you get the Molotov cocktail scene where they're burning up the rage infected. We get introduced to Selena, who, because I kept having to turn the volume down, I thought was called Serena until like right into the end. So we're introduced to her. My cat's now playing with a golden snitch toy.
any noise in this episode has mainly been due to a cat of enjoying herself. So
yeah, enjoying herself.
If you don't like that, then switch off.
But remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review before you do.
Need to start putting like a little thing like this episode features cats. This episode does not feature a cat.
Yeah, they keep them guessing. So we're introduced to Selena and her friend, who apparently is called Mark. Like I said, I had to keep going through the volume, so I didn't even pick up his name. And they have that bit where they're in the shop and they're talking about like, well, the world's gone to pot. We get this is the kind of the exposition scene. You know, where she's like, oh, if it gets into your eyes or if you get a single like drop of spit or saliva on you or blood, you're cooked. And then Jim wants to go home.
He wants to see his parents. He's thinking, I'm not far away, and he keeps saying to them, and they're trying to say like, you've got no. If you go out like at this point, like you've got no check. You've got to wait. Like
and then
we've only survived this long by being this
cautious. And it's when there is that horrid scene where they do get to Jim's parents' house. Jim's parents have committed suicide, and you're like, given the circumstances, that's probably like.
It's a weird scene to be looking at a scene of like two people who have died and his like reaction to it, and being that like weirdly like you understand why they've done it, and it's one of those kind of, I think of these are the reasons why this film like was seen as kind of embracing like more of the dark worldly tones of like what would the world actually be like if you hit this situation, like how would we actually, this is what people watching their COVID to start with being like, I'm getting ready,
this is what they thought COVID was going to be like, wasn't it? They were like, it's going to be like 28 days later,
it's going to be like 28 days later, like just looking in the street like, where's the rage, man? Where's the rage coming?
Where are they coming?
Checking people's eyes.
But it's true, because it feels like a lot of zombie films pre this, they dealt with the undead as that kind of like they're a symbol for something in society. Obviously, I think Day of the Dead, and I mean Romero was the master of it. But Day of the Dead focused, I feel, a lot more on that kind of human side, and this picked up the mantle from that in a little way. We are getting like long moments where we don't see infected, and I imagine that probably was like a budgetary reason, but it also means that we get to focus on stuff.
I think it makes this one better though, that the rage monsters are kept somewhat, I'm not saying to a major minimum, but actually a lot of those scenes are kept to just certain points of the film. The rest of it is fairly kind of journey, exposition, character based, which I think is what made it so refreshing, when previously it'd been a lot more like, we can have this, and we can have, sometimes we do still have deeper meaning, but we've got to have also a lot of action, and it has to be a lot of like we want to have a lot of content.
Like I was just thinking about it, you get you get like spottings of them, so you get the church, and there's probably like 3 or 4 after him, and then when they're in the tower block and we're introduced to Brendan Gleeson, I think you get like 2 chases.
But some of them are quite quick as well. The chases is like, I mean, the film has a good fast pace. When it's in those moments.
But even the ending climax, isn't a whole horde of them surrounding them. It's not like, it's not.
I mean, the zombie part of the finale is not even like, that's quite not actually that long down that part of it. So some of the getting to know it and being there is, but the actual zombie part is actually fairly quick in like the moments that you get for the most part. And this back to because this is one of the best. Like I think I forgot this whole part of the scene.
It always stayed in my head.
What, the parents, or the one that comes, the bit that came after? I was like, I did not realise how brutal it was in this.
Always stuck in my head.
Yeah, I mean, this film is quite brutal towards humans. Like the brutality that they're suddenly willing to go when.
And a lot of it's the after effects. We see the after effect of the virus on London. The day after we watched this, and I messaged you, I went to the hospital for work, and there was a water issue on one of the units that I covered, and I walked into it. and the door was open. Usually it's not open, and I was like, oh, the door's open, I'm going to go in. I walked in and there was nobody there, so it was just these machines that were all turned on and ready, and I was like, this is fucking 28 days later.
What the fuck is going on?
I've just woken up. I'm not naked, but I've just woken up.
For no reason, you're
for no reason I'm naked.
I need to have my penis.
I need to be authentic, And then somebody came around the corner like a minute later and told
me. You were just ready to fucking...
But I'd been...
You were ready to fucking just crash your head straight in.
It was really creepy. So we see like the after effects on the big scale. Yeah. Then we see the intimate after effects with Jim's parents, because you have that thing of like, oh, he's got to go and he's going to see his parents and have a reunion with them, but nah, they're off themselves. Yeah. And then we do get Mark's story, which is where he's telling about like, we were trying to get on like a plane or a train to get out of the country. Everyone
starts crowding in, and then suddenly
you can't tell the difference between who's infected.
One comes in, and you start like and those kind of. I don't know why that really reminded me of like something like the World War Z kind of like the way like when they hit the crowd, and that like in that one, and the way that kind of like was like you've suddenly got no idea, and they would start crowding, and you've got no idea who or what's going on.
It comes up in 28 weeks later. Which I think we said we'll try and cover, but there is a scene where it's very like that, where there's one and there's loads of people, and then it just like shit spreads, and you don't know who's.
I mean, it is like that idea. That seed planted there is a really good idea because it's a really claustrophobic and terrible. Imagine being that like already the idea of being in like basically like a stampede of people, like people getting stamped on and crushed, and that's already a fucking like terrifying thing that's like in quite a lot of films. So that seed that is planted there, and that I think that's why that story works so well, because when he's saying it, I think you can imagine already what that idea, the imagine of losing someone in the crowd and then also losing them in the crowd that's suddenly becoming fooled, and then once you actually start to remember like seeing what these rage monsters are like, I think that comes even more terrifying. I was like, although at the same time, I'm also a little bit like, how the fuck did you not know the difference between like that guy and the fucking like screaming at you? I mean, like jumping through the air and flipping about and like what the fuck?
I'm known to rip people's faces off at the slight provocation, just on a whim, so you wouldn't know. You'd be like, oh, it's just Bobby.
It's just because obviously the very like movements of them in that kind of like animalistic kind of way that they kind of sometimes like pounce and sometimes kind of move around, like they're quite different from sometimes scene to scene. Some of them are very similar, some of them are much more like running around like people, some of them are more animalistic. I like the story I read about like James McAvoy. James McAvoy thought he was auditioning for a lead role in this film. Okay. So this is James McAvoy before he was big. This is before like Shameless. He was in that and stuff like that. So this is him thinking he was auditioning for that. And he said he went into a room with like Danny Boyle, and apparently the reason he got chosen because on his CV it said that he was like quite like gymnastics and stuff like that. So he'd done those kind of things. Apparently the conversation was just him talking to Danny Boyle for about 20 minutes, and Danny Boyle being like, can you do this move? Can you do a backflip? Can you do this? And he basically, it was Danny Boyle just there basically working out how he was going to have the creatures move. Okay. And then James McAvoy was like, so it turned out I was actually going for one of the zombies instead of actually one of the actors. And then he said, and then I did about 20 minutes of basically doing moves to like help Danny Boyle work out how it's gonna, how the zombie's gonna move, and after like kind of helping with that kind of thing, he never called me back. Yeah. So he's like, I never got a call back. But he's like, I think he just sat there to basically just use the people that were coming in just to basically work out. I'm still not quite sure. I'm the zombies move. So you just move about. You're good at gymnastics, are you? Great. Okay, I'll use you for free for a couple of. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, at the same time, it's not the worst thing in the world, James McAvoy, because at the same time in the 90s, Harvey Weinstein was having people do it. When he said bend over, that was a very different thing.
Be careful of that. That just reminded me of, did you hear about Mads Mikkelsen's audition for the Mr. Is it Mr. Fantastic, the stretchy lad in Fantastic Four?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he went in to audition for it, and they just asked him to hold his arms out, and he was like, "Okay," so he did it, and then they were like, "Oh, that's it, thank you," and he left, and he was like, "I don't want to do that film." They just said, hold your arms up.
And also, if I can say so, if you're gonna cast Mads Mikkelsen in a Fantastic Four film, to not go Doctor Doom is fucking insane.
Yeah,
I know this is obviously that was a young Mads Mikkelsen, but it's fucking.
No, I don't think it was that young. I think this was like 5 years ago.
What? Oh, it was the newer one.
I think so.
Oh, not the. I was thinking the 2000.
Oh no.
5 one.
No.
For that one.
Yeah.
Wait, but that had like teenagers playing them.
No, not the teenagers one. The new one.
Oh, the new one. Oh.
Maybe he was supposed to be what John Krasinski was.
Maybe something like that.
But either way, Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to after that.
After that,
the horrid, the bit that the second part that you probably forgot but that always stuck in my mind is when the infected burst through.
This was the bit where my house fucking exploded with sound because the window smashed through.
I turned
I was
it
like,
down,
fucking hell.
And I think Hannah was trying to read. She's trying to read something, and I've turned the volume down, and it was really quiet. And then I'm like, I'm going to turn it up. He's telling a story. It's a quiet moment, and then
that was it. I was like, I want to hear this.
Yeah.
So that got me. Maybe just more because my sound system went boom, but I was like, fucking hell. Like, so I jumped. Maybe I don't know if that's necessarily for the thing, but the jump scare worked anyway. I guess it worked. And then the ravaging inside of them, like them trying to like basically like survive as it's like bursting through the kitchen and through the rooms and stuff like that. And obviously, like. That's incredible, but it's Selena.
Yeah,
it's what Selena does to Mark. I was like, fucking hell. I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. So obviously, like, she thinks that
she doesn't think.
She thinks Jim. No, she thinks Jim. I mean, she's assuming that Jim is the one because Jim was actually quite like close. At the time. Yeah, I have no idea because he's basically there's several times in this film when he's like basically like pinned down, and you're just like, how the fuck? Other people got it in like nothing, or a bit of saliva, or a bit of a fucking bird drops it in. But you, goddamn, you survive when you're fucking pinned down on all fours.
And fucking pissing
I mean, the rage monster can be inside of you, and it seems you'd be alright.
And you're fine. You have a condom in your ass permanently.
Yeah, and then we see in the background that Mark is kind of holding his arm, and he's trying to stay away, and he's he knows what it is, but. It is established. It's what 10 to 15
she
seconds.
Says like 10 to 20 seconds.
I mean, and that adds the speed of that is another really clever way of it because the zombie thing was always like, oh, it's okay, we'll get you better. When you die, and they know what's coming when they die.
Yeah, and there was always that one guy in zombie movies who's like, I've been bitten. I got bitten at the end of the first act, but I'm not telling anyone.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're looking really sweaty and pale. You're okay. Like, this is like days later.
And this is what I love about that scene, to be fair, with Mark.
Just like...
is the fact it's like you're hiding it. In any other zombie film would be like, oh, okay, you're going to hide this for how long? Until you start to get sick and die and da-da-da. But in this film, there is no time to... Like,
you don't have time.
Even the time it takes a hiding, he possibly should have already started showing rage, way faster than he does in this moment. But, and I guess it all depends on... as lots of people have pointed out, between, say, this one when he gets bitten and the difference between that and later on with, say, Brendan Gleeson with the blood the blood was directly into your stream through the eye, would be directly into your bloodstream, whereas here it's more bitten saliva, like not necessarily blood onto blood kind of thing, so it might take longer. But it doesn't matter because it's not like Selena waits 30 seconds for it to fucking machete the fuck out of it. And I mean, like, there's a nice way to do this. There's a way that she could have just at least slit his throat, or fucking just straight through the head to make it at least straight through something, stab him in, just let him die. But instead, she fucking butchers him. This is the most violent death almost in the film.
Almost. And you don't see much. You just see her hacking, blood spraying, and you hear him cry for like the first 3 or 4 things. And you're right. You could be like, oh shit, if I've got to do this, maybe I'm slitting the throat, maybe I'm going into the heart, maybe to the head. Instead, I'm not just going to fucking corner you and hack you. And
that's what I mean, fucking hack it, and not even clean hacks. I mean, she's doing fucking dirty ass hack. Like, I imagine his head is fucking splintered into bits, and he's still alive.
It's an old wound. It's an old wound.
Yeah.
So it's blunt.
I mean, I think it's might have been so much it's like she's so on edge for it to constantly happen that she just
she ain't fucking
she just almost zones out into this kind of I just have to do this kind of thing. But it by far is probably the most brutal put down of someone who's like dying, like someone who you become like friends with, I think I've ever seen in a film.
It's so fucking brutal.
It's like literally like that. It's like literally like any film where you think of where someone's had to, and it's a common thing in zombie films to have to maybe put down, you know, things like that. Or any film, you know. Imagine if in Mice of Men, instead of him getting that to the back of the head, it's fucking like he fucking just pulls out like an AK-47 and just blasts the shit out.
Just riddles him.
He's like, "You dead yet? Nah, okay, keep blasting until he just fucking tears him apart." Like this is basically
so brutal, man.
Hey lassie, I need to take you down by the well. Here's the machete, fucking butcher.
Here's a blunt butter knife. I'm gonna take you out. It's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, there are people in horror films who have done horrific things who get off lighter than Mark does.
Yeah, and Mark's just like an average guy.
And for helping her survive to this point and having a horrific background, and he gets to go out of that world in a fucking... It's also not... the way she does it, it's just not... I'm thinking economical. It's like, if you're going to do it and you know you've got 20 seconds before he possibly turns, I mean, and the fact that we know that they can take a good amount of damage before they'll actually die, her doing that to her is, again, one in the heart. You know, one in the you know, I know at first he's not exactly up for dying anyway. No one's going to be like,
hang about. Yeah. Come on, maybe I'm the one who's not going to turn.
Maybe I'm that one. But
maybe I'm special. Let's find out.
Yeah, but it's that kind of you're thinking, something quicker would have probably would helped save time and save Mark a little bit of pain in the end. But but to be fair, I think it also does what they want to establish is that Selina's a fucking badass.
She is.
She's taken no fucking prisoners, and even people that she likes or loves. Even with Jim, later in the film, she's very ready to just fucking go. But we see that there's a slight hesitation that she doesn't have with Mark.
Because she says she's like, "Oh fuck, I'll do the same with you, mate." I love the way she just says it, like, "Fuck it off you as well." I'll go for
this is why he's not coming at him like.
And he's just covered in blood.
Yeah,
you know.
Which also is, again, actually, just to hark on more of the way this makes that isn't the best way of doing it, is because she does it in such a way that there'll be a lot of blood splatter.
Then there's more blood.
For someone who any moment now may turn into and may already have in their blood the rage virus.
Yeah.
A death that leads to a lot of splatter is a bad fucking idea.
Yeah, maybe let's not have some of that.
Maybe, again, maybe so it's a bit cleaner, might make it so that you're not fucking... spray. It's like, Jim, were you infected? No, well, you are now. I split his guts all over this room. There's blood in everyone's eyes. I'm turning right now.
Yeah. I'm turning, baby. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, any death that's like not bloody is going to be brutal. You're not going to strangle him. That's even worse.
And I mean, although this film doesn't show all of it, it works well in your brain, but it's not that this film isn't gory and graphic. It definitely has its moments.
It has its moments. It's not quite as... I know there's a horrendous scene later, but it isn't quite as bloody as I remember.
No.
Despite
I think a lot more of it's in your head.
Spoken about, because a lot of it is in your head.
Well, you're not seeing that, but you're hearing the screams, and you're seeing how much she's fucking going at him.
Yeah, she's fucking going for him. But so I think like my brain put a lot more in there.
And I also think there's something about the rage monsters being so like, because they look so bloody and so violent, I think it just makes you believe that any death from them is gonna be fucking ripping apart like a fucking like a bear going at someone, just like he's just tearing, he's just going right at them.
But apart from the end, how many people are killed by?
I don't know why then. I thought you were legitimately going to... How does a bear kill someone? Let's go into that. Like
quick side up.
Side note. Exactly how does a bear...
How does a bear... Do they punch
I was like, I'm not ready for this follow-up question.
Ready for this. Yeah.
Sorry, what was your actual question?
How many people are actually killed on screen by the Ragers? I don't think there is...
I think, I mean, not a lot, because, but even at the end, a lot of it is like, runs in, jumps on them, runs in, drags them out the room, but you're not seeing it necessarily, you're seeing them being dragged away, but you're not always seeing, like, a lot of it is clever camera work, that you're seeing, so you're someone going on, you're almost feeling it, you're hearing the screams, and it's all so chaotic that you're not really sure what you saw, I think, quite often. And that's why I think I lean more towards the idea that actually, for the most part, we don't actually see that many, like, especially in terms of, like, gory, pulling blood, ripping things out of them. It's not that kind of death.
It's not that kind of thing.
It's much more like
they're not zombies. We have to remember that they're not feasting on.
They're not feasting. They're just tearing
you to death.
They're just enjoying.
So I don't know which I prefer.
What, being turned or
being torn to death or being beaten?
For a zombie, I guess, I don't know. For a zombie, you have a reason. You are a nutritional meal.
Yeah, that's true.
For a rage monster, you're just dying for no reason. You're just being punched to death for no reason. You're just fucking being.
Yeah.
So I don't really know which one I prefer at all. I just know I don't want to be Mark.
Not Mark. That's it. Don't
Moving
Mark.
on.
Yeah. So we do, we see, we'll just skip kind of through a bit because we see
the city, don't we?
Yeah.
We see the lights. They put up the Christmas. I think mainly the next part is going over to.
I was about to say Brendan Fraser's there, but it's Brendan Gleeson.
Brendan Gleeson.
Although it would have added a comedy touch if Brendan Fraser just comes in and he's just.
Brendan Fraser, yeah, he's a good dramatic actor as well.
He is, but he plays it as if he's in The Mummy.
Yeah.
Rick O'Connell.
Well, there you go. Better Rick O'Connell would have made any film better. It's a 90s film. Any film with Rick O'Connell's better. This is what I love the fact that so
Brendan Gleeson.
We get to Brendan Gleeson's fucking great. He, someone who is, highly Irish and stuff like that. At first, I was thrown off by his accent being so like, what is it? I can't actually remember they're near London, aren't they? So it is a kind of a London like kind of accent, a somewhat-ish Cockney-ish kind of accent going on there, but not a full-on Cockney. We're not talking Danny Dyer or anything like that. No. but he's good. But again, it doesn't sound like out of place. He's a fantastic actor.
Oh, he's incredible, and his boys.
Oh yes, well his many boys. He's got many boys.
He has many boys.
Many boy actors. Yeah, he hires all his boys out.
He hires the boys out. What boys they are as well. Beautiful, handsome boys.
But I've got. There is one thing, and I saw a lot of people on here, and I was very thrown off by it first because his accent is more me getting used to Brendan Gleeson doing that accent. I think it was more that, because I've heard him do a British accent and I've heard him do his standard, and most people probably Mad Eye Moody is like the Mad Eye Moody is kind of a his kind of like version of like the British kind of, that's not in the Irish tone of that one, but so I got used to his accent, but his daughter's accent, I could not work out what the fuck she was saying at first, because I was like, what accent are you meant to be doing? I was like because you don't sound like your dad. No. You sound almost somewhat Eastern European.
I was like, you sound Scandinavian. Like that, and I was like, Scandinavian daughter.
So who are you meant to be? And it wasn't until I researched where she was from that I suddenly managed to work out what it was she was doing. So she's from Liverpool and has quite a Liverpool accent.
Oh no, yeah.
So what she's doing, and if you really listen closely, you can almost hear where she's doing Liverpool. She's almost got a slight Liverpoolian accent, and she's trying to cover it where she's trying to do this Cockney accent, and the two together sound like the weird tone of the Liverpool kind of, the start of a Liverpool accent into a Cockney, and it makes it sound like some kind of Scandinavian, European kind of. You're like, what are you doing?
It's an odd one, isn't it?
And then throw on top of the fact that she delivers her lines with almost no emotion the entire film.
Yeah, it's a shame.
It's weird that it's weird that I didn't remember her being like that. I thought, oh, she's fine, she's the daughter character in there. And it's not that, I'm not saying that it's like a major problem across the film. It's just the fact that she has a couple of key scenes. Yes, later on she's meant to be a bit more drugged, so there's a reason for it. It almost makes me think they went, maybe we should drug her to make her seem more
drug her all the time.
Maybe we should just do that. Or is she drugged the whole film? Maybe she is. But it just, in some of those early scenes, it's just the line delivery just doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound like a human saying something. It sounds like some robotic language coming out of that. Again, I guess, young actress and things like that doing a role, but it just, sadly, it just didn't quite, her parts, whenever she spoke, it just took me out of the scene, because I was like, what are you saying?
But Brendan Gleeson's incredible, and the character as well.
He's like he makes you like he's a completely lovable. He is the thing is, I guess, when you got someone like Brendan Gleeson who's done a whole range of different types of roles, and played all different types of people. When you see him doing that, I could not. I was in my head going like, I was like, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but something about me keep making me think that he's going to be like a diddler.
He's going to be a diddler.
I don't know what, and I think this was from another film that I've got this. I kept getting the feeling in my head that he was doing his daughter.
Yeah, that's just, well, I
kept thinking. I mean, then that is a plot in another. There's another film that has
plot.
There's another film. I think I knew for the army bit later on that there was going to be something about someone trying, sexualizing it like that. But I don't know why. So I had this thing. I can't remember what the film is. There is a film, horror film thriller kind of thing where it does kind of reveal that actually the dad's been, diddling the daughter. I can remember it in some kind of films as like the Howder Cider House Rules with Mr. Tobey Maguire. That has a plot point about where a dad's actually impregnated his daughter and a whole like fucking hell. But there was more of a horror thriller. I can't remember what it was.
I've only ever heard of the Cider House Rules, and I've never watched it. And in my head, it was basically like The Last of the Summer Wine. So you saying that, it's just made me be like, what the fuck is that?
The Cider House Rules with Tobey Maguire and Mr. Why am I better? Michael Caine.
Mr. Michael Caine.
I think is an excellent film. I have the book at home. I plan to read it, but it's like 900 pages. I'm like, fucking hell, I can't read it.
I just watched it. How is it compared to The Last of the Summer Wine? Vibe-wise, do they line up quite well? Good night, Mr. Tom.
I mean, it's definitely got a quaintness to it, but it's not quite that quaint.
That's what it sounds like.
It's you king of kings, you kings of New England, or whatever the film does. Off on a little tangent there.
Back to it. Big Frank.
But luckily none of those things are true, and actually he just continues to prove that he's actually just like a generally lovely bloke. And he's he's got that, maybe got a little bit of a drinking problem, but who wouldn't at that point in time?
I mean,
who doesn't deserve to have four bottles of whiskey in one go in a bit?
I'd probably stay there a little bit longer as well, in all honesty.
They're very quick to be like, they've got they've set up this kind of barrier, but they're very quick to be like, we've got to go. I mean, I guess I assume that with four of them, food is now, because food becomes kind of a main, like, we're going to have to find somewhere to go.
Yeah, they're in a supermarket.
Oh, you mean say in the supermarket?
Yeah, I mean,
I thought you meant in the apartment to begin with, because they're very quick to like one night and then they let us go.
Because they go to the supermarket. You get the scene where he gets the bottles of whiskey, and there's
they're like, I don't want chocolate, because chocolate obviously being the one resource that isn't like turning to mulch. The high sugar content, which isn't true, because it's You're right. Was it 28 days later? Is it actually 28 days later at the start of the film? Because then again at the end it says 28 days later, so then I was forgetting if it is.
One calendar
month. So a month is not, I know the fresh vegetables, and there is it's not that long, because in the supermarket the fresh vegetables are turning, but they're not all gone kind of thing. They're still able to get some kind of vegetable.
But I'd be, I'd just be like, why don't we stay here for a little bit, lads? Because nobody's clearly come here.
No one's come in there, and none of the rage are in there. So it is a bit like a nice, let's just eat for a little while.
But then I imagine at this point of the film, it just comes out, and Danny Boyle has just cut in Dawn of the Dead. You know, and it's just like now they're just going to be in a shopping mall, and you just watch Dawn of the Dead.
We're just going to keep them in there in a shopping mall, or just the British version, just in one supermarket.
Yeah, just going to be in one supermarket.
We don't have the mega mall so much, so we're just going to go with one supermarket.
One supermarket. You get the scene where they're kind of there's the blockade, but that they're trying to drive through in the tunnel, and then the tyre gets blown out, and you're like, fuck, you need to change this tyre, the lads are on the
having too much fun driving about trying to
over
fuck about with the rages.
I mean, I remember, do you remember that one time we had to change my tyre?
Yeah.
And my jack broke, and this is what I was watching this is what I was thinking about. I was like, it didn't take us hours to do it. It probably took us 5-10 minutes to change that tyre, because we did encounter some problems.
Probably in hindsight, we were probably there for 2 hours.
We were there for many hours.
Rob started crying.
I cry anyway. I just cry just to do it.
I lost my fingers. And
you've never been the same.
We finally got
But imagine having to change a tyre in
in the middle of a tunnel,
seconds in a tunnel.
Yeah,
when these lads are after you. I'd just be like, Nah, I think this is it, lads. I'm either going to run, or I'm just going to go in and hide.
Just look over to the side. Maybe one of these cars works.
Yeah, maybe one of these ones.
There's loads of cars here. Maybe we should check this quickly, just in case she ain't fast enough.
Yeah, that's what I do. But yeah, that's,
I mean, this is quite a story where we get we've had these characters that are highly obviously suspicious of who these people are, and they're trying to sell, and especially Selena, she's consistently on high guard.
Yeah, she is.
And this is kind of the part when we get to see them crack a little bit away from that kind of thing. Jim's getting a little bit more used to the world around them. Selena seems to be somewhat breaking that kind of I have to be on high alert all the time.
I have to be alone, that kind of thing. They have to see where they sleep in the ruins, which is quite nice. And then you get a random dream sequence, which kind of feels like it was in there just to pad it out.
Was that the one in the when he goes back to his house with his parents, or was that?
No, he's watching that on. He's watching that as a video. It's when he wakes up and he's alone.
Oh yeah,
and then he's not. He just wakes up and he's not alone. I was like, that was a pointless scene.
Yeah, that one was a little bit of a padding kind of.
Yeah, that's like, oh shit, we need to get fucking.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at least the watching the video, the parents were like, that felt somewhat dreamish and like its connection. At least that was like an emotional scene. So we get this. We get I think mainly the nice thing I guess is it adds for what is quite a chaotic, fast paced, quite dark kind of obviously film that doesn't have a lot of let up. This middle part at least does give a little bit of light in the darkness kind of thing. It gives a little bit of turn, lets us get to know, and the main thing is it nicely gives you enough when I think a lot of other film might have offed Brendan Gleeson's. He was about longer than I kept thinking, is it happening? Oh no, it's not yet. It's not happening now. Like, when's it happening kind of thing. I know you're going to die, god damn it, die. Turn, you bastard. But at least it feels like it gives enough time to really let it hit a peak of when you're like, they seem to be really like a little happy family. They seem to have suddenly been like, we could do this. We could just keep doing this. This is nice forever. Like, we're happy, as soon as we find somewhere safe. And then he has to piss off a crow, doesn't he? Yeah. He has to go and piss off a crow.
Well, they when they're at the flat, just to say why they go out, they hear about, not only do they hear like, we're running out of resources here, but also there's a barricade or like a military kind of blockade set up in Manchester where they're helping people. So let's nip down the M25 or whatever it is, and let's go the M6. Let's go to Manchester. They get there, and it's that thing of like, oh, it's clearly been ruined. It's clearly been destroyed. And he's fucking fuming, so he's kicking stuff.
Yeah.
And then you get, and I always remember this as well. This is, if anything, my brain like blacks out at this point. Where the blood gets into his eye. He realizes.
I knew they got to an army part. I just couldn't remember how that happened. Went from this part of the film to then that part. I felt distant to me.
Remember any of the bit where they get to the army.
Oh, right. I could. It's mainly more because I could remember the rage monster in the yard. I remembered that kind of part of the film, but I couldn't remember a lot of what happened in that part of the film. But I think this bit is so like, it's so like not only like sad in many ways, but it's also kind of this moment of. I just love the way it's shot with it dripping off of his beat, and just the way it just hits. Like, it's just like the most the most accidentally coincidental moment that could have happened. Like the fact that he had to be doing that it had to have like the blood of the rage that he up there. It just I think it's just that kind of poetic kind of oddly like sad poetic kind of moment that you kind of had that you're like,
you do everything right and then one thing just fucks.
He's trying to do everything and he's trying to look after his daughter the best the best he can, and then and then obviously you get his right, and even to the very end he's still trying to be like, you got like get away from me. And he's trying to warn them, trying to tell like Jim that you need to get her away from from me, and I couldn't remember I couldn't remember that it was one of the army guys that is the one that appears and pops up and just
Jim's hesitant to kill him, and even Selena's kind of hesitant because she has to take over. She's with Hannah,
and she's holding back Hannah.
and then somebody just nips up and it's like, "Oh, gun him down, don't worry about it."
Yeah,
and just fills him full of lead. And I was like,
it makes you. To be fair, even if he hadn't died, it makes you wonder. Well, they were obviously already watching them, so where was this escalating anyway?
What would have happened?
Yeah, where would it have gone? If Daddy was still about, and what we know comes later, it's kind of how would that
breed my daughter? Yeah, crack on, lad.
Exactly. So how was that going to play out? You kind of wonder whether either way, whether he'd made it past this point, whether he would have made it much further later on, because they would have turned on him quite quickly.
You really
out of them, because Jim's more distant from it. Yeah, Jim, although he is protecting them, he's almost more. I don't know why, I always get a strong feeling more like he's kind of protecting Selena than he is Hannah.
Oh, definitely.
He seems more drawn in by like Selena, whereas like Hannah's just kind of part of it. Whereas if you'd had Frank there, I feel like it would have been a much more straightforward, like, what the fuck's happening here, lads? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, we're not, no, we're not doing this.
Killed.
You know,
his body.
He would have gone for them, but they would have like probably like beat the shit out of him to death or something like that.
They'd tried.
He maybe got a quicker exit here. So it's, and also, by the way, again, daughter, the dad line that she says is so wooden and so emotionally empty. I didn't really feel like she's getting pulled back, which is kind of helping, but the fact that we get that weird like dad, like she is literally like that, it's like dad, as if she has no idea what's just happened. I understand shock and things like that can play a role in this, but it's just like a really odd line to end it before they cut off to the it's like And then this is the part and where we kind of both said that this starts to go into a little bit more, where it felt for me it felt a little bit. And this is not that I actually dislike this, but I think I think it works for what it is. It just felt like the originality of the first part starts to drift away a little bit more, and it starts to be a little bit like, where are we going with this? And we need to have more of an antagonist, I guess, or something. Yeah. And we have to really push it into like that. It can't just be the world of the rage. And it is going away from that idea of, the zombies can't really be the bad guy. We've got to have the... We need to have someone. We have to have someone else. So this is when we have to get used to the army men led by Mr. Christopher Eccleston.
Mr. Christopher Eccleston. Yeah. And for me, this is the part of the film that I'm not really a fan of, and I think this is when, like, thematically, a lot of it does link up, and it's very clear what Danny Boyle's trying to do, what he's trying to say, or at least my interpretation of that. We open up with before we get to the chimps with the rage virus, you see like video footage of stuff like I'm sure you see Saddam Hussein being hung, but I was like, I'm sure it was like Saddam Hussein, and then I was like, but this is like 10 years before he died. This is somebody who looks like Saddam Hussein being hung. And then maybe it was like one of his impersonators or something. And then you see like rioting footage, all of this kind of stuff. And it does kind of
4 years.
4 years. Time travel.
I was just Googling it. I thought I'll check that. We might be completely wrong there, but it's 4 years before he died.
And then eventually, you do have kind of Jim, who's been kind of passive when it comes to a lot of the violence, finally being like, I'm confronting this violence that's inside of humanity. And I the soldiers themselves.
That part works well. The Jim part works, that he's actually, because the whole film, like the passive Jim that we quite often get, the guy that's out of place, he has to become, in order to survive, he has to become what Selena is to Mark. Yeah. He has to basically become this in order to actually, like, he can't just be the guy that's kind of like, I'm here, this seems okay, this is alright. I'm just passing through life. I don't really, and he's also, I think he has to find a reason to live. Yeah. Because I think with his parents and stuff like that, if they went around, I'm wondering whether he would have basically been like at home. If he'd got that far, fuck it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna watch this movie and I'm gonna pop some pills and we're done with this kind of thing. So they had the right idea. Yeah.
but for me, it kind of feels like it just goes into a bit of like Day of the Dead, British Day of the Dead. Where we get the army soldiers and they've got to be conniving. There've got to be some kind of slippery bastards.
You've got Christopher Eccleston doing a perfectly good job as like the leader kind of general,
I think he's good.
And he's a guy who seems to be seeking order in the chaos, and he seems to be seeking which doesn't always show through, but the actions he takes show that he is somewhat lustful of the power. he kind of seems to like the fact that now he gets to be in charge. Like, it's his army now.
Yeah.
It's not anyone else's. I own this now. Like, this is mine, so I'm going to keep my men happy no matter what that takes, kind of thing.
Which is weird because, you know, there's the part where they're having like dinner. Yeah. And he's very much like, there's the one lad who you guess he kind of like becomes a bit of a defector, you know? Yeah. When the scheme is revealed, he's like, nah, I'm not doing that. He's very much talking about like, well, the world isn't different anymore. You know, he's like, there was violence before. All of the news was filled with people just killing people, all of that kind of stuff.
He's lived through those things.
And I've lived through it, and now it's exactly the same. And it's just a bit odd that he's like, you know, it's exactly the same. The world hasn't changed. It's quite a harsh place. Let's lure women in for sexual slavery. You know, like, how does that sound, lads? You know,
I mean, he sells it very much as it's for his men, not so much that he's into it. It's more the fact that he is like, he's doing what he's doing in order to keep his men in line under his control, so he gets to get what he wants, which is to be this man in charge, and
but he does
the respected leader who will do anything for his men. Obviously, he's pissed off at the lad who fucks up with the eggs.
Yeah, but it does kind of seem like he's effectively doing prima nocta, you know, because he's like, get them in the red dress and bring them to my quarters.
Yeah. A little bit. I mean, there's definitely a bit of that. It is a bit like that, but it's the weird thing. I mean, one thing to be honest for me that was weird is, you know, they live in this time. They've had this rage monster. The one thing I guess that is almost the problem, where weirdly I feel like this was something that might have worked more in maybe the weeks later, or the months later, or the years later, but in the days later. I mean, I know. Yeah, you know, lads like to get it.
Lads like to pun.
You know, you know, you got a lust for it, and you got a need for it. You know, whatever. But I feel like the idea of getting to the rape after just 28 days. But then, feels a bit reachy to me for that many men.
Never to excuse it.
No, I'm not.
There's no time.
I'm talking in this dystopian that is never the right time. Even if the world is coming to an end, there's no right. But you know, this is a well-worn kind of theme of some of these apocalyptic kind of areas. You know, but I don't know why. Just to me, 28 days later just seems like a very quick time to be like, you know, or whatever we are, like just over a month. And it's like just over a month. And I'm already turning to, you know, it's just like the idea that you're on an island and you've crashed with people and it's been a couple of hours and you're like, your leg looks good, mate.
That leg looks good.
You know, it's like, we've got supplies back. We've actually got supply. Or, you know what, lads, you know, you can deal with that yourself. That fire looks good. Get cooking, lads.
Yeah. Or you just like you're just stranded with, and the only survivor is another woman. And as soon as you crash and you get out, you know, you take your parachute off, and you're just like, you want to fuck? Like, it's just us two. They're like, we've crashed for like 3 minutes.
It seems oddly quick to get to this like layer of it has to be like that.
Well,
I know they sell it on the we now have to repopulate the earth and like which is just their excuse for rape.
Just their excuse.
You know what I mean? It's just their excuse for what they're gonna do because that's what they want and that they can take this power and. Like, as if that's how they can show that they're in power.
But going to that thing about 28 days is that there is, you know, when Jim realises, because, you know, Major West tells him. Major West.
Mayor West. You mean like in Family Guy, played by
Adam West.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's now in the army.
He's now in the army.
Yeah. When he tells Jim, and then Jim's like, "All right, ladies, we're popping off. You know, we're not staying here for this." And they batter Jim. They take Jim and Fowl, apparently his name is, and they take him to this mass grave out in the woods.
Yeah.
So this is another bit of that world building where, like, you know, you're thinking, well, they've done this. They've lured people in.
Yeah.
They obviously go and check the.
There's a lot of people there that have also got army stuff on, so as in people have already gone against them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Like,
this isn't new, although the guy that's going with them seems to be acting a bit more like this isn't the usual.
Because it's odd, isn't it? Because you're saying 28 days, but it's not as if they've just gone, I got an idea, lads.
Yeah.
So it's kind of almost like, did it go to pot? And they were like, what do you reckon? Yeah. It's odd.
It is. That's just why I think when you think of it in a time frame, that part as well. It was just some of the flaws that popped up in my head. I was like, when you really think about it, I was like, again, and like I said, like if we went, if you went to like months later, or where you're talking nearly years, and you're going several years. These are themes that I feel like I was like, okay, I can see if they've never seen anyone in years and anything like that, and this is how humanity's turning with a certain bad group. Yeah, okay, I can see like within that thing. Again, I'm not endorsing it.
No, you're not endorsing.
Yeah, I can see after there's a statute of limitations, and after this many years, it's okay.
It's fine. No, in an apocalypse.
But yeah, it's more. Yeah, I was thinking. It just felt oddly like a close explanation for these guys to be doing what we're doing. It felt like an oddly like I don't know. It didn't feel like the best explanation they could have done for what goes down here.
I feel like once it gets to this part where they get the army, it is just like it does kind of step down.
And I think it goes on for a while, but it all felt very quick to me. The explanations, the turning to that, like getting to these points.
It is quite quick.
It is like well, I guess, yeah. It felt like it would have been a slower part in my head. I think that's what I more remembered was going to be like, the final act is quite like slow because it kind of builds time with the army, but it feels like it really quickly goes from, here's a dinner. Oh, right, we're gonna
the lads are running in. Yeah, the lads are running, and we're gonna have this like battle scene where we kill them. Oh yeah, we're gonna breed you. And you're like, oh, okay. It's very quick.
And then obviously from him almost getting killed, Jim turns into
Rambo.
He turns into full on like killing mode.
A man who
pretty quick. Like he goes from that passive to suddenly like
a day.
I mean, I guess almost getting murdered by these guys, and the idea that they're going to be like.
I mean, it's rough. It's a rough idea.
It works in the level of that. It's just the Jim character, but I guess he's always we never really fully know him kind of thing. So I guess you can also put it down to what's bubbling under the surface. He was an absolute animal before.
Yeah, he was a fucking. They put him into that coma for the safety of humanity. They were like, this man can't be allowed to live. He's just kept
why exactly did he get into that? You don't know what he was doing to people.
But there is it, because like the day before, he's like struggling over killing that kind of little rage-induced boy. Completely understandable. You got to do it, but it's pretty rough. And then the next day, by like midnight, he's turned into like the Batman from Arkham City, and he's like crawling in rafters and like sneaking around shirtless,
Part of it, I mean, I guess is just the fact that these people are so like unlikable that he's like, I give no shits about these people. I don't care. But I mean, there's the difference between giving no shits and being able to use your thumbs to take someone's eyes out.
And that's so brutal, isn't it? And I completely understand
the guy's why. Screaming, and he's just like, I'm still going.
I mean, the guy is a prick.
Oh, absolutely. He's an absolute bellend.
And I remember watching this, and this was before, obviously, like, way before, the Mountain versus the Red Viper, which is still a horrid scene. But this was where you're just watching it and you're like, oh my god.
It's a great scene if you don't like Pedro Pascal. So, if you're tired of seeing him in everything, go back and watch that scene.
Just watch that.
You'll enjoy that scene.
But honestly, it's just like, it's so brutal that bit.
I mean, I think the thumbs into the eyes is one of the most brutal killing. Like it's the one where like you just would be like, okay,
just kill me.
If there are many ways that I could die, that I think many people would be like, thumbs it, no.
Yeah, you have to kill me.
I don't want to do
that.
You know what I mean? Like, there are certain ways in which you just think, if I've got to go, then anything. But if I've got the choice, and if that's my option, then I'm dead. I'm just offing myself, because fuck that. Yeah, that ain't how I'm going, kind of thing.
Yeah, I ain't doing that.
You know, like literally, there are many ways that people would be like, I would rather die that way or that way, not thumbs to the eyes until I've had so much pain that my body just goes,
I'm done.
Shot, my heart's like, fuck it.
I'm Brendan Gleeson me.
I mean, and so we get, obviously, he comes back. We have the tease earlier of the soldier. I always remembered the soldier on the chain.
Yeah,
he's quite. And the acting of the guy, whoever's. I don't actually know who it is, but whoever's playing does a fantastic like movements and stuff like that. You can feel the terror, and these are some of the points when I actually quite I liked the way that we're using Christopher Eccleston's character to be like, I'm. at first we're researching them, and then we realised, we're trying to see how long they can starve and things like that. That kind of... And that, works as a plot and actually works as a reasoning for things.
Yeah.
And I like, once he, gets, shoots the chain, lets him free, it does add to this really, because then, again, we get the score, we get the In the House by, and this score is fantastic, it really adds something. When that starts playing, I think it does add something to the action. It does make it feel more chaotic.
Yeah.
It makes it feel all faster. It makes you feel like, it's quite a kind of pumps you up kind of theme as well at the same time. It's a fantastic theme. So, so when we get, you've got like, him rushing him like quickly pounces on the one guy that's holding the girls captive in the room. As I said before, Hannah's been drugged. They were going to just try to kill her, just literally which is another darker moment. That they literally just take them to fucking die. This will be better than what's about to happen to you. You're about to be raped by several guys. So it would be better if you just go to sleep now. Go to sleep and die. But she's already had enough of it that she's just zoned out the rest of the film. Yeah. Which the acting doesn't really change much from.
No, the acting doesn't really change. Maybe she was just on diazepam the whole thing.
Yeah. But the so that is all that you've got like when one of the soldiers now runs into the kitchen and grabs the guy and the other one, and you see him get dragged eaten on the table and then dragged the bodies off and stuff. Oh yeah, the guy that gets dragged off inside the cupboard, and you've got that kind of cool where he's got the shot inside. And you can kind of see the movements and stuff like that. And you can see them outside and you're just like, well, I guess they shouldn't really notice you kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then suddenly, there he is, dragging him off as he's kind of getting out of there. And
there's the bit where Jim's running and he kind of sneaks through one room or he runs into
the one guy's
fuck, I'm out of bullets.
Don't leave me!
Yeah.
And he opens the window and Jim's just so fast and he's window fucking...
It's not only that, but he's just he just opens the window. Yeah. And the other guy isn't maybe I should have the window open just in case.
And that, well, to be fair, and they're following close to high, so the other guy's got no chance when he gets swept. And that's another one when it seems like you see more than you think you see, because obviously he just runs up basically and just pounces onto the guy. On him, yeah. You don't really get to see a lot of the blood put and things like that. It's mainly just pouncing on him and riveting onto him and screaming and shouting. It's all very. I mean, it's one of the bits that I think what does make this kind of part is the fact that this is all quite fast and chaotic, and it does give a good sense, and it has a few kind of what feel brutal moments, and it has moments that make you think. And again, it shows a progression for Jim. It's a little bit fast in the progression, but it does show a progression into Jim. And then obviously this more builds to the escape when they've got on the when they're outside and Hannah jumps into the car. And you've got the Christopher Eccleston part where he's in the back, he's in the car kind of thing, because he's been hunting him for a while kind of thing. I mean, and I like the scene of her reversing so that it smashes through and they pull him back out of it.
But I always thought he got a bit more of a brutal death.
Yeah,
because I thought you
just see him get dragged away mainly, don't
into the darkness, and then you just hear him die. And I thought they gave him not quite as brutal as Captain Rhodes' death, but he does kind of fit into that. And he's called Henry as well, so I think there is that kind of link there. And I thought he got a similar death to him. I thought it was a bit of this guy's a cunt, let's give him a really horrid death. But instead, you don't really see him die.
No.
No. If anything, it sounds a bit quicker than than some of the other chaps' deaths.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit faster than those ones. I see what you mean, because when he gets pulled away, there's a lot of screaming, but it feels like actually we're not really seeing anything. No. And you thought he is built up as this character that you'd normally be thinking in any film. It's you're gonna get, you're
getting the thumbs in the
you're getting all of them out there, or they're all coming after you, or things like that. And no, his is they kind of get out of there. Obviously, Jim's also been shot. I guess is another detail there. Because this is part of the
gut.
Because this is the part of the original ending, which is
I didn't know about. There was a different ending.
So there's 3 different cuts of endings that were originally done, all of which involve Jim dies. So Jim was always the story was always meant to have Jim dying.
Okay.
But test screenings for it, they hated that ending.
Really?
They said it just didn't. So So the original alternate ending. So one of them that obviously that he just dies from what happened within the from that. Some of them involve it as they're kind of leaving, that he kind of goes out, but so all of them conclude with Jim dying. So one is the gunshot wounds. In another, Jim dreams of the accident that left him in a coma as he dies from his gunshot wounds, which I think links with that scene that seems pointless but would have meant more in that cut of the film. And the third, a more radical departure, was presented only in storyboards, and instead of Frank being killed by soldiers after being infected, the survivors tie him up and discover a research laboratory at a blockade where Jim undergoes a blood transfusion in order to save Frank.
Okay. Well, that's a bit of an odd
that one. One's, and I've got to be honest, when I read that one the other day, and when it said Frank,
it's a bit of an odd one.
I thought they meant Christopher Eccleston's character, and therefore that made more sense to me, that ending, because obviously if you had as in Christopher Eccleston's get injured, West getting being like, we're going to use him to save him. That kind of makes an odd kind of thing. But in order to save, I mean, I get it, I guess. That they're trying to almost save the the nicer kind of vote. So okay, so he's got that. I guess that's more kind of, he dies in order to save someone who's the more nice character. But it just that one just wouldn't work for me.
No, that feels a bit odd, doesn't it?
I mean, I don't know. I quite like the ending of this. I quite like the ending of this film, and I like the way it leaves it open and it leaves certain questions, and it kind of leaves you on a kind of that. And it, to me, it always felt like an end.
Yeah,
like
same.
It's done. Like there was no need for follow up, even though they said they fought them, because Jim dying is one thing, but I personally don't feel that the dying was earned with it. I feel like he's only just come through. For him to only just come to that point to then die feels like a giant waste to me. So I understand why dying was not the option. But I don't know, I quite like the whole kind of more hopeful, slightly kind of
so ending. Do I, because it also implied, we get the bit where they're in Cumbria or something out in the countryside, and they're putting out like a giant hello or help sign for people passing by, and you get this jet that's been flying around, obviously maybe searching for people, or doing something like that, and you get these shots of these two rage infected creatures dying
against a rock,
and they look at the thing and they acknowledge it.
But they can't do much.
They can't do anything because they were withered. And this is 28 days after the original 28 days. So this is 2 months later. And it kind of does make you think, okay, maybe West was kind of right. Maybe it's just about outliving them, you know? And
which again makes them even more things for so quickly going, we'll turn to rape.
We'll just turn to repopulating the planet. Do you know the
already.
Planet? So, you're already. You've got to wait them out.
I mean, I guess it's not something to wait for in order to save humanity. I understand that, but not quite, not quite that way.
Yeah, not quite that way.
But I always remembered the ending, and I always remember it being a slightly hopeful in them kind of living in their little shack, and but also having that I kind of always liked the fact, and also I think this. I've heard this as some people saying that why Weeks felt actually unneeded. Because it kind of felt like, you're doing it because that was a popular film.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this had such a kind of, it's quite nice the idea that one of these films ends and that's the end. And you can see the glimmers of hope, and you can see that they're actually, the virus is passing through. Isn't just like any other, when you had previous real world infections, viruses and stuff like that, not to this way, but showing it as that and saying that, but it breaks down, but these things do rebuild, and these builds do come back, and the hope can outlast it in a world which in this film is shown is a very quickly turned to a very bleak and dark place. It can be saved through that, and and I like that, and I think again the shots look really beautiful. These big high shots, things, the jet that flies past, being a real one, because I did read they were going to do a computer generated one, and it cost way fucking more for it to do that, which is great because that would look horrible, terrible now. Apparently it was going to be $70,000 just to make one 5-second shot of a jet going by, and they were like, maybe we could just ask the RAF if they'll just fly one by, and it was filmmakers out there, remember that is a key.
You
just ask people to do it. I'm sure, like they'll just get them to fly instead of doing a really shitty helicopter, which we've seen in so many films of this really shitty like. That looks terrible. That's not a real helicopter. That looks so out of place, and you've done it in that film. No, just ask them. Can I use a helicopter? Yeah, we've got loads. We're good, guys.
Just fly one over. Get the red arrows out.
Fly over for 5 minutes. That's fine. But yeah, it looks like I think those shots look fantastic. And I've said about like sadly the quality of the video quality of the film. The quality of the thing. No, but again, I did get used to it I got used to it very quickly. I got used to the way it looks very quickly. It just, upon first look, it really is. If you've gone from like watching like a circuit like 4K on Netflix or whatever you've been watching, and then suddenly click to that, you'll be like, "What the hell happened to my TV's to the screen?
My TV's broken.
Have I gone back in time to a TV from my your little like
CRT
your little
TV.
DVD/TV combi that you used to have it like that? Your TV that was literally a huge cube in your room. The block, the kind that would kill Stu Mackey.
This TV kills Stu Mackey.
New ones wouldn't do anything. They fall on your head and you'd be like,
maybe that's the record to getting back in the new one.
Yeah.
You watch it back and it's been digitally changed to a fucking flat screen. And he's not dead.
Yeah. That's how you bring it back in the new one. Yeah. They're like, didn't you realise it's actually this?
Yeah. That leads us to our question.
The must-see horror.
Which is it must-see horror? And as usual, I will let you take this away.
I think you said it first last time, to be fair. So I think I built off of that to say that. I think so. I think, we've already said this film rejuvenated the house. This has got more than enough good quality, and just because some of it stylily doesn't live, and sometimes these types of films do struggle to kind of know, how do we bring this to a close? How do we break? I think the actual ending's great. I just think the build up to it, sadly, is where the film shows its most flaws.
Yeah.
But the rage monster, the infected approach, not really. I understand why Danny Boyle says it's not zombies, because technically, it's not, but it is. It's within the realm.
It's not, but it is.
It is. It's that kind of thing. It's not, but it is. And it just many of the shots, even with the video quality sadly diminishing so much, many of the shots in this film are still like iconic shots of cinema. I'd say at this point, they are amazing, fantastic shots. Majority of the characters are like really interesting characters that we get to follow, and it's got fantastic actors for the most part that are filling in really good roles, and I can't find enough flaws in this film. I enjoyed watching it, and it's not a bogged down, it's not a slow film. It does feel like it's pretty fast, just like the Rage Monsters, and they are a scary creation. They are, I'd still look at those across all of zombie time that we've had and go, they are one of the scariest versions that we've ever had in cinema. As a horror film, and to many people, they do feel that they are the scariest version we've ever had of this kind of infected, because the way they've shown them. So, I think that is, I know many people like the more action-heavy kind of sequel kind of thing, but I like the slowness of this film at points, but not so slow that it feels like it's just dragging.
Yeah, I think given that, it does have a relatively small cast, and it's quite intimate, after that initial opening where you see the devastating effect of what's happened, it does become a much more intimate, kind of character-driven, focused film. I think it's fantastic in the way in which it does that, but it doesn't kind of have that feel to it.
No.
It does jump around a lot of places. It has some elements of kind of like dark humor and fun without tipping over into being like too much. I'm thinking like when they leave the supermarket and he puts his credit card down.
Oh, yeah.
Just like bits of like
little
humanity. Little bits of stuff like that in there. I don't think I'll ever be a fan of the that third act. I feel like it just I want to say it feels a bit lazy given how good the rest of the film is, just to be like, oh yeah, they are, these army lads are bad, and the people with the guns are bad, and maybe we're the evil ones all along.
Yeah, the political messaging at times loses focus. I think from things, it feels a little bit pushed in at times.
A little bit, and it feels out of place for what has effectively been like a very character-driven film, I feel like, and a story very much about kind of survival and humanity. It just feels a bit shoehorned in for me. But yeah, I think it's must-see horror. It's an incredible film. It's really well made done. I haven't seen 28 Weeks Later since shortly after it came out. I remember having it on DVD. I remember preferring 28 Weeks Later. So it'll be interesting to see how it's aged, but also go back and watch it and see if I still feel the same. I still am hesitant to get too excited about 28 Years Later, but I think it's just because I wonder how much there is left to do. How fresh can you do it?
To that end of this era of like, are we truly done with it? The cast does, as I said, the director, the writer, and the cast looks really incredible. Good.
But it's that thing of like there would have been, and maybe this is where I am now, but there would have been a time in the 90s, and I mean I'm trying to think if Resident Evil came out before this or after this, but there would have been a time where you'd have had many zombie films. You'd have had the
first Resident Evil was the same year as this.
Okay, so you'd have probably had that, and you'd have had the slow shuffling zombies, and you'd heard that there was a zombie film coming out called 28 Days Later, and you're thinking, well, what's it gonna, like how much can we flog this horse?
Yeah.
And then it does it, and it revitalizes the genre, and we're focusing. We're now in a place where The Walking Dead has been so dominant. The Last of Us has been so dominant. We've had quite a lot of these kind of dour, downtrodden, this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
The zombies are dangerous, but the people are the real problem. Like, are we just getting this? Or are we getting another kind of like...
For them to be making a trilogy, they must have an idea that's got to be, there's got to be something to it. Hopefully that someone's gone, we'll pay for a trilogy and we'll already make 2 of them before you've released the first. Like, if the first one was a bomb, then they'd be like, fuck it out.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that happening to us. One with the cast, and one, I think that there's a fair amount of hype that built around it. A lot of it just around the fact that they saw a guy who had barely anything to his body and his bone mass, and went, oh, that's Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
They killed him off already and revealed it in the trailer. That must be Cillian Murphy. Look at him. He's thin as a stick, and he's got that brownish hair, and he's got this like look in his eyes, like he's not here, like he's different, like he's zoned out, just like Cillian Murphy in any interview you've ever seen him do, because he fucking hates any of that part of it. But yeah, like I understood why people are doing that, but I was just like, I'm sure that's not Cillian Murphy's character. That would be a weird reveal in the trailer. But hey, that built a lot of hype for the film. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think maybe the closer, but I'm very much hoping, because the trailer was oddly poetic and quite like beautiful, but I don't feel like it gave actually that much away. It kind of just gave you these weird scenes and this weird poetic nature. I just hope it stays like that. Keep that up and let us go into the cinema and be like, what are we getting?
Let's see, man, because we're gonna. I mean, I'm assuming we're gonna aim to cover it as well. So what I would advise is that you hit that subscribe button, so you do get the episodes as soon as they're released. You leave us a lovely review, because that always helps. And you come and let us know what you think or you thought of 28 Days Later. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. Let us know whether 28 Days Later is a must-see horror. And remember, if somebody gets so much as the faintest scratch on them, you must brutally take them out within 10 to 20 seconds lest they turn. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.